All right, and welcome back to Saturday Night Chit Chat. And wow, I'm super excited to have this gentleman on. He's played with so many incredible musicians. He's such an incredible musician himself. You know, played with Bill Bruford, Alan Holdsworth, performed with everybody from John McLaughlin, Billy Cobham, even Katie Lang, which I didn't know about until I did a little bit like deep dive research for you. We can talk about that a little bit. But I want to thank everybody. Thank you so much tonight for everybody. Welcome, Mr. Jeff Berlin. How you doing today, Jeff?
I'm very well. Thank you for inviting me. And like I said, when I saw your image, your background, the color you use, your sunglasses, you definitely don't look like a typical yeshiva student to me.
Oh, okay, right on. Well, cool. Well, I got to work hard at it. So, but I appreciate that. So, Jeff, so I thought I read this somewhere. I don't know if it was something you posted or I read it somewhere, but you live in like Nashville now. I know you're from New York originally, but you live in Nashville now, don't you?
Yeah, I've been here since 2017 because my business partner, John McCracken, is here. And between he and I and the efforts we put in, we recorded, we finished Jack Bruce. That comes out in September.
Oh, that's so amazing.
We did a little single called Joe Frazier Round 3, which is the best bass performance of my career thus far. We've released bunches of books together. We have other recording projects. So I came here in order to be close to this colleague of mine. Yeah. And be in a town where really some of the best players in the world live here. So I'm definitely, at home amongst these guys.
Yeah, I just interviewed about a month or so ago. I had Billy Sheehan on the show, and he moved down there not too long ago, and he loves it down there. And I have a really good friend that I do some stuff with named Jennifer Hartswick, an amazing singer. She moved there recently, actually bought a house there recently. So yeah, it seems to be the place for so many people, and that's incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about the Jack? It's funny, I had Mike Watt on about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he's a huge Jack Bruce fan. Even that's one of the reasons why he plays, the EBS bass that he plays. And can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, Jack was a hero of mine, my very first and greatest to this date influence on bass. When I was a boy, I had his name painted in luminescent paint on my wall of my bedroom. Jack Bruce, Ginger Baker, and Eric Clapton, and I would take a big spotlight and hit the letters so that at night they would glow. I mean, I was a real kid fan, and but more, we became friends. And when you're friends with the guy that literally is your hero and your singular musical guide, that's quite special. So when he died, I loved Jack and all his solo records. Quite a fan of him. I think he was an original in several areas of music. So when he passed away, this was 14, was it? 2000? I was in Germany on a tour. Anyway, I said, I'm going to make a record. And it's like 7 years later, but we're wrapping it up now. And it consists of, Jack's catalog is so huge that you can't really say, I'll do this song and this song and this song, because there's so much left out. It's impossible to cover the full legacy that he left by doing, Sunshine of Your Love and maybe Theme from an Imaginary Western. So when the Beatles' Love came out, that was produced by Giles Martin. That was George Martin's son. Right. And the record was so spectacular that because he took clips of like 20 Beatles songs and somehow parlayed them into fitting in the same key and the same tempo. It was a remarkable bit of production. And I said, I'm going to do a similar thing, but I don't have those production skills. And John McCracken didn't see it that way. So what I did is, I won't go long in this, is I took about 20 or 15-ish Jack songs and compiled them all into 8. Wow. I found a way to add or sometimes have 2 songs at the same time. And ironically, the arrangements are perfect. They actually work. Now, it'll come out where musical enthusiasts will love the originality of it, and then true diehard fans of Jack's might dislike that sections of the songs weren't included.
Yeah.
and that I did things to make it sort of original in its nature. It's my vision of Jack Bruce, and to be quite honest, it rocks like a dog. It's my best project. I think people will really dig it, and I'm thrilled about it. And it hasn't even come out yet.
Wow. And then would you have an approximate like street date for that yet?
Yeah, I think the technical, excuse me, I think the technical date is September 7th.
Oh, okay, cool. So that's not too far. Yeah, coming up.
Not too far. It's finished now, so we just need to add 1 or 2 vocals. I went to sort of the A-list, and the A-list guys reasonably don't like to sideman out on projects that in status are below their rep. Sure. I understand that.
Sure.
A few guys were very cool with it. So I had some very good. I had Sammy Hagar contributed a vocal.
Oh, nice.
As a vocalist, I had Alex Ligertwood, who sang with Santana. But I went to guys like Roger Daltrey. I went to guys like Sting to play an 8-bar bass thing, because I wrote a thing with 8 bass players. So I went to McCartney. I went to Sting because they're the A-list and they're excellent bassists. And I couldn't get them to agree, which is fine. They were polite, just said, no,
sure.
I get 100 offers a day.
Right.
But I did parlay great names into the list. Geddy Lee contributed a bass part. Alex Lifeson contributed a solo. Scott Henderson, my old buddies, playing in the Cream Jam that I used with Gary Husband on drums.
Yeah.
In that section, the drummer is Bruce Guttridge, a guy from Nashville who I completely fell in love with. And he's the drummer on the record. But for this, the trio is Scott Henderson, Gary Husband, and me. I don't know. There's too much to report. Our friend Billy Sheehan contributed 8 bars.
Did you say Tony Levin? It sounded like you're getting ready to say Tony Levin.
Tony Levin is on it. Marcus Miller, Michael Leake from Snarky Puppy.
Yeah, I just had him on last week, actually, on the show. Yeah.
Did have him, right?
Yeah,
Ron Carter is
contributed
8 bars. It's a thing that John McCracken called a bass relay. And it came out spectacularly. So there's a lot of original music here mixed in with the traditional Jack songs. This is not a Cream record. There's one Cream track that encompasses 5 or 6 Jack songs from Cream period. It really worked out excellently.
Have you ever met, Jeff, have you ever met Gary Cooper, Mudbone? He toured with Bootsy and P-Funk for years, but he toured with Jack for a while. This is probably early 2000s, I guess, probably. Yeah, around that time.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay.
I didn't know if you'd had like cross paths. He's an amazing vocalist. That's how I met Bootsy, because he had me do some bass on some of his demo stuff and introduced me to Bootsy in the meantime.
I invited Bootsy to contribute.
Nice.
But never heard back from him. And I don't mind that. There's a lot of guys, they get things from all sides. The one guy that irked me for not responding was Jeff Beck, because he knows me. And while I got politely turned down by a lot of people, I had contacted Jeff for about 6 to 8 months, trying to get him to play a solo on a tune. And I mean, I never got from his rep or him or anybody else like, thank you for offering, but I'm busy.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And it's the one particular, non-following through that I admit I found annoying. So.
Got it. Well, let's hop around in your history, and I can't wait for this to come out. Let's hop around your history a little bit. Just jump around the timeline a little bit. Obviously, you born in Queens, New York, correct?
Queens, New York.
Yep. And then you played violin for many, many years before you even picked up the bass. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was a 10-year student, and I was a good violinist. I was one of the top kids in the Long Island area, played orchestras. I'm an orchestra prepared musician. I mean, not the New York Phil, but
yeah.
And more than high school orchestra, there were regional orchestras around, and I was a part of them. So I was a very well-skilled and deeply immersed into learning violinist.
Did you go from violin to upright, then to electric, or straight from violin to electric in terms of bass? Yeah.
Straight to the electric, because I frankly don't like to play the upright personally, as it's too well connected with my classical beginnings. So I'm not, as much as I'd rather hear a Dave Holland play it,
sure,
or a Ron Carter play it, I'd prefer not to. So I went right to the electric.
And then how and why did that transition? Was it like, some band wanted you to play bass in it, or like, how'd you get into, what made you go to bass?
Well, the Beatles obviously were
Yeah.
the height of their popularity, and the bass is tuned from low to high as EADG, the four-string bass.
Yeah.
The violin is tuned from low to high GDAE.
Yeah.
So the string technic names are the same. The intervals are different. The violin's in fifths and the bass is in fourths. So,
Right.
but I came out of Mendelssohn and Beethoven and Tchaikovsky. I said, and I knew the popular genre of music. I said, this ought to be simple for me, and it kind of was. I mean, obviously learning the instrument.
Yeah.
So I picked up the bass and quickly adapted, and I never look back and never will. I love classical music maybe more than I ever have, but I really rather not play it.
Sure. And then when you started playing electric, you mentioned the Beatles, but like, did you do like the high school band thing, like, play at parties and that kind of thing? Is that kind of how you kind of got your feet wet with it?
Sure. I lived in Great Neck, New York, coming up in the 60s, and we had a pretty good and rich community of us kid players. There were several of us that were fundamentally fully dedicated to music. As one could be. We were fully immersed in it. So we did bands and we played around. I did Long Island gigs when I got a little older. Yes, I was just a kid coming up and learning.
And then I imagine then you kind of hopped over to the city then, and that's kind of how you started kind of getting your name on the map and connecting with people that way?
Which way now? I missed that word.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming you started like doing gigs in New York City and like, is that how you kind of started getting your name around and getting your name on the map and gigging with more and more people, just networking that way, I'm assuming?
I think so. As I progressed into this, there's something I've always shared and I probably will share for the rest of my life, that I do these chats and stuff.
Yeah.
There's a before therapy Jeff and an after therapy Jeff. I'm in the after therapy Jeff, and therapy freed me from a lot of mental difficulties and problems that I had carried with me up until about the time I was 60. When I was younger, I got into playing in this sort of manner, which directly had its roots to the violin, so that people would love me. So I would play, love me. That's my joke term for it whenever I do this chat. Love me. You love me yet? Well, you'll really love me now.
Right.
So
sure.
I was very much focused on myself and the bass without understanding its position and function within a group. So I developed two reputations. One, that I was one of the best bass players in New York. And two, I might be one of the more difficult bassists to play with because I wasn't team friendly. And that criticism was completely justifiable. It took me a while to learn it and eat some humble pie, go to my therapy, find new ways to be in the world, and finding ways to approach my instrument. So that's why it's pre-therapy and post-therapy me.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, every bass player I have here on the show, we talk so much about the songwriting aspect of, I love everything you're talking about. I mean, every bass player knows that about, look at me, look what I can do, look at this. But I'd say, if I was stuck, desert island thing, and I was stuck there and they said, name me one bass line that you had to hear for eternity, mine would probably be Papa Was a Rolling Stone, and it's 3 notes, so it's like, it's almost counterintuitive to all of that, so that's pretty incredible. Now, was it like, once you kind of how far, like Bruford obviously was like really kind of what kind of blew your name up in a lot of circles, and first off, tell me how you guys, I mean, I know you played with him, I read about that a lot, and that's obviously the thing that put your name on the map, but how did you guys connect? I mean, where did that connection happen? Because he's British, right? Bill Bruford is, right?
He is.
Yes. Yeah. So tell us about that. Yeah.
Sure. When I was after Berkeley, that was the summer of love for me. I played with Pat Martino. I played with Carmine Appice. I played with Patrick Moraz.
Mm-hmm.
When I got out of school, I instantly entered into 3 profound gigs for me. Anyway, somehow I had met up with Carmine Appice, who lived in Oceanside, New York. I lived up in Great Neck, New York, so we weren't far. we decided to play, and Ray Gomez, the guitar player, was his guitarist, and Ray and I became friends. Ray was a good friend of Patrick Moraz, who had just gotten the gig with Yes.
Okay, got it.
Bill Bruford was looking to make a band, and Patrick mentioned to Bill about Ray Gomez. So Bill came to New York to meet and audition Ray, and Ray invited me to play bass to join him. So I joined and we played, and from the very first moment we played, Bill and I sort of zeroed in on each other. He was Bill is an interesting drummer because I'm sort of in a world where technique, you know what I mean, is sort of king. Bill never really had what you might call classical drum technique, but to what he had to me was infinitely better. He had a snare that had its own tone. He had the rototones that had their own tone. He had a couple of rhythms that were his own thing.
Yeah.
He was so original in using absolutely every tool of drumming that he had. So I used to refer to it, actually with love, that quirky drumming of Bill Bruford's. And my quirky blah, 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 and his quirky ding chicka tack, it gelled. And so that's how we met. And then when he decided to make a band in earnest, he invited me to come to England, and I became his bass player.
That's incredible. Once you guys recorded it, I mean, did you hit the road pretty hard with him? Both, like I'm assuming a lot of European dates, and then over here in the States as well.
We did a lot of America. We did a lot of Europe. And while I have you online, I got to tell you something, because John Clark, the unknown John Clark, was an inside joke because he wasn't known. But frankly, before I really got with Bill, except for regionally, I wasn't known either. So anyways, John Clark contributed stunning guitar, actually was a remarkable bandmate. I'm so glad to have had the opportunity to play with him. And as well, this band never would have worked without the harmonic vision of Dave Stewart. Dave sort of did his thing, and I played a lot of notes and got a lot of attention for it because it wasn't expected.
Yeah.
So that made me at that particular time special.
Yeah.
But Dave Stewart really was the true core of the musical presence of that band. I gotta say, without him, this never would have come off.
Well, and then in terms of the writing process, we won't go too deep down the rabbit hole, but just in general, was it more of a collaborative thing, or was it more like someone had a pretty good rough outline for songs when you come in, or was it, based off of a lot of improvisation? I mean, how did you guys put songs together generally with that group?
I think they prepared the songs, Bill and Dave. And here's another nod to Bill Bruford. I don't really know his background in regards to music training, but whatever it is that he had, he parlayed it into something absolutely original.
Yeah.
You gotta take your hat off to Bill Bruford. Every skill that was his, that might be determined to go about to this particular level, was extended by the dint of his experimental nature. He wrote songs that were phenomenal and oddly quirky, going back to that word. So he would prepare a lot of songs. I didn't write much in that band. I may suggest a couple of things, or I made there's one thing he did in Hell's Bells where I suggested during the arpeggio, he did a boom, 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 bang, little thoughts, things I changed, harmony. That's about it. This is primarily a Dave Stewart, Bill Bruford compositional group.
Got it. And then, so while we're talking about, studio and live, I'm sure it's kind of probably fluctuated over the years with your career, but I mean, in general, do you have a preference? Do you prefer to be more of a studio guy? Or you love being on the road playing in front of people, or is it apples and oranges to you on that?
Apples and oranges. I adore and deeply, passionately love both. Yeah. I love studio. When I'm with John McCracken, and we're doing something in the studio, I'm in the sky. When we look and edit or do something, I'm in the sky. I love the studio, and I love sideman mentality. I just adore it.
Yeah.
Or a leader in my case in this thing. I love it. And then playing live, I mean, what can duplicate it? I'm fortunate in that I worked hard to find something on my instrument, and it liberated me. I'm sure other bassists, well, I'm not talking that I'm the only guy, but I found liberation in playing almost anything I hear, almost anything.
Yeah.
If I could do it, and it came from always trying to get a little more. Oh, I don't know how to do that. Let me try and practice this. I was very deliberate about it for many years, and the rewards are for life now. So that's why I'm so emphasize that people learn well while they have the time. So
right, yeah.
So,
yeah, that's great, and we'll get into that in a sec. Well, like staying on the live thing. I usually kind of, this is more towards the end of the conversation, but we're kind of there already. That's okay. Where do you think, between your own gut and your own experiences and the other musicians you talk to and everything, and this has obviously been evolving even over the last few months, but just generally, where do you think we're at with live music? I mean, we still a ways, I mean, I know there's shows happening, and I know, festival shows, there's little, I've got a couple little spotty dates here and there myself, but like just in terms of like touring, are we way a ways from that, you think, or what's your feeling on that?
My feeling is we're back. I think it's like getting a car up to speed, kind of getting on the highway. I think we're okay. The COVID seems to be more or less now under control. Yeah. In regards to the possibility of passing the virus to each other. I try to book for 2022 for my Jack tour, and already the bands in 19 or 20, I should say, that were canceled due to COVID have already filled a lot of the slots in 2022. So clubs are fully thriving as far as I've been reading and hearing. Yeah. Booking agents I'm talking to, I'm still looking for other agents too. So everybody is still catching up, but the motor is going. Yeah.
Right. It feels like that. You're right about the catching up thing, because I know with festivals, it's like a lot of it's just rebooking what was canceled basically a year and a half ago or whatever type thing. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about your, and we'll kind of start winding things down a little bit, but let's talk quickly about.
You're the boss here.
Oh, no, that's great. Well, I appreciate it. The, your, teaching is like obviously such a huge thing. I've read so many articles, seen stuff you've posted, seen interviews with you, and it's such, you were joking, or I think you were joking, about controversial teaching styles and methods and stuff like that. And everything I've read from you, and you correct me, please do, but like, everything, a lot of what you talk about is kind of meat and potatoes kind of stuff that you think you're supposed to learn as a player, whether it be reading or technique or that type of thing. Do you, I know when you said about controversial with different people and stuff like that, I mean, there's obviously some truth in there. What do you think that makes, your approach, like people kind of like, take a second look at it or whatever, I guess?
You mean get nervous when I?
Yeah. I guess that's getting that. I think that's it. Yeah. I mean, obviously you're very, determined to say what your point is on that stuff. And again, like I said, most of the stuff that I've ever read that you've talked about is kind of stuff we're supposed to learn as a player. So I'm wondering what what happens when things get a little crazy with people. Yeah.
It's we're in a time now people exhibit a bit of a sensitivity factor. I mean, they've done humor about it. You can't joke in any way. You can't say things in a clear manner, because people, generally, not everybody, of course, tends not to be comfortable with straight talk. And straight talk isn't meant to be insulting talk. It's meant to be clear. So you can, and it works everywhere in the world, but bass education and in the bass community, bass players aren't comfortable with it, even though I feel it's the truth. And you could say to somebody, smoking causes cancer. There really isn't too many ways to take that statement.
Right.
And yet a smoker won't write online about how offended they are by the statement. But if I do refer to bass educators, many of them are popular, and many of them have the ear of a lot of people, that the methods that they're teaching or the things that they're sharing are not going to get bass players to play better. Bass players are not happy with this point of view, they're not happy with this point of view. And some will find more offense in the mere fact that I suggested it or stated it, than if the point is true or not. So there's a couple of guys that have the ear of a lot of bass players, just everybody, and people regard them as infallible, that their point of views are without flaw or without error. And you can't look at a music teacher this way. You can't look at a teacher of music or someone who is guiding your future in this manner, because by looking at somebody as infallible, you're putting them in a position of Jesus or a God. And bass players are not easily accepting that somebody could play wonderfully well and be really not qualified to teach. A couple of guys did things where music is not first. Music isn't taught first. Bass playing isn't taught first. I could quote, and if anyone ever asks me deliberately names or concepts, I'll answer them deliberately. I won't volunteer it deliberately. But people that mean well, teachers that, I know I'm bumbling every which way in order to be politically correct here, but teachers' good intentions does not qualify them to teach. And a whole generation of bass players is now consigned to musical difficulty, possibly for the rest of their lives, because they are very deeply in love and trusting of the wrong teachers.
Sure. What is
a wrong teacher? A teacher that does not get one to play the bass better. It's so simple. So I tended to say these things out loud, that even a oboist is more dedicated to the instrument and the learning of the notes and the raising up. Learning is different than playing. And I find that because of the fact that I coincidentally have such a diverse background, all based in music education, while most bass teachers don't, I know more than they do. I'm not better than they are. I'm not a better bass player than they are. I know more than they do. And I've always invited people, if you disagree with my views, share them online or share thoughts. Yeah. I mean, more than this, because you could say, the world is round and a flat earther will disprove it. So, but if people want to talk about it, I'm here. I'm not talking debates. I'm not a debater anymore. I'll share thoughts and then see how people feel. But I'll end this now. I think that people are consigning themselves to difficulty out of their fan love. I think that they are looking at certain teachers really incorrectly by seeing them as flawed. And I think that some of these teachers are flawed and are not good music teachers, even while they're lovely people and that they play wonderfully well. That's about everything I can say about this.
Right.
I don't mean any harm, but I wanted to be clear, that's all. And if people disagree, then of course ignore my thoughts. Right,
totally. The thing that it seems like even in the last year, it's really gone on almost like on steroids, but like a lot of bass players I see, like my Instagram feed is almost all these like 1 minute, 2 minute little videos of people shredding for about 2 seconds, trying to get as many views as they can on that little shred session they have. And I mean, there's some musical things happening too, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of times I don't know, it's a weird thing, because when you start seeing it over and over and over, it's just my thing is, like I mentioned earlier in our conversation, it's about the song. I mean, I'm a bass player, but it's like really, it's all about the song. It's not, I happen to play bass, or that's my main instrument that I'm known for, but it's still ultimately, how does that bass contribute to the song itself? And so, where it seems like it's so oriented on, your chops or whatever, which, I get it, I mean, everybody wants it. We were talking about that earlier in the conversation.
But even the concept of the song, that's a recent addendum to bass conscience, whereby now that became, each period begets a certain philosophy. The new one is you got to play the song the way the song wants to be played. I cannot think of a synonym for the word DUH. Duh.
Oh, right,
I can't. I've looked and I can't find it. And duh is a disrespectful term.
Sure.
Similarly, when so many people say, "Well, you got to realize the song and play the song what the song needs," that's similar to me. Like when you go out driving today, make sure you don't get in a car accident.
Right.
It's obvious. It doesn't require the emphasis. A song, for the most part, is a very simple concept. Play the bass line, Sunshine of Your Love. That's my go-to explanation.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, to realize, what did you say? Play the song as it's real. You use certain words. I don't recall what it was. But...
yeah, well, I mean, just realizing that your role as the bass player in the song, I guess, is what we're saying. Yeah.
And that's sort of a duh. I mean, it's like when you eat, make sure you don't eat my food and your neighbor's food at the same time.
Right.
Well, duh. When you know what I mean? It's
right.
But bass players are not aware of certain things. And by doing so, quite frankly, in this particular day, people create things to solve.
Yeah.
Groove is one of those things. You got to groove. Duh, you got to play the right notes. Duh. So I mean no disrespect, but our community, if they spent a month with me, I'd change them all. And the only reason that I feel that I could is because I'm going to give them what is proven to work to improve. And that leaves an awful lot of room to be self-taught and go into other things too. So yeah, forgive me, I don't mean any, and forgive me people, but I just think that people create difficulties or consign titles or explanations for things that are just too obvious.
Yeah.
So it's just basically done out of inexperience. And for the very least, I have a ton of experience in a lot of ways, and I'll share it. And some people will ignore me, which is fair, while always a couple of guys go, "Oh, I didn't think of that."
Right.
In a way, I do these things for them.
Oh, that's awesome. That's incredible. Well, hey, so let's kind of semi-last question. Let me. You mentioned obviously the Jack Bruce thing that's coming out in September, which I super can't wait for any. Real quick on that, real quick before we talk about anything else. Are you doing any is there any have you guys been filming any video during the recording of it, or is there any going to be visual stuff, or is it just all just straight up? Yeah. Okay, got it. I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an old school guy in that. We have Sammy Hagar singing on a tune, and he volunteered to film himself.
Oh, great.
I may just put him there. I haven't filmed anything, and probably felt I could learn from people and maybe do those sort of things. But I'm so of the idea that if the music is excellent, people with an appreciation of good music will know.
Oh, for sure. Definitely.
That's just my way,
Totally. And then which leaves my final question, do you have anything else you can tell us about on the horizon, whether it be your own stuff or people that you're playing with or tours coming up or anything like that at all you can let us know about?
I shouldn't mention it. I turned down a gig, and we'll stop there.
Okay.
I turned down a gig. Sorry, that sounds sneaky, doesn't it?
No, but you got the curiosity and the cats, that's for sure. Yeah.
I turned down a gig for a variety of reasons. I'm a very honest and very decent guy. I look forward to doing things the proper way, and sometimes I feel that if things don't reciprocate as well, I prefer not to. So,
okay,
it's hardly worth mentioning. I apologize that I did. Yeah, I have 2 records on the works. I finished writing; it's already in the can. I haven't played it yet. A classical record. Going back to my roots, and I written original music sort of a little bit in that style, and then have reviewed a couple of famous classical works and did some arranging on it. So there's that, and that ought to be out in a year, maybe after Jack cools down. But I want to tour Jack next year.
I was going to ask you that if you're going to have a tour to back. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, great.
I have a slamming group.
I can't imagine.
Problem is that they're not the top name guys, because top name guys are doing their own thing. So this is where things get a little dicey in the description. I have guys that are not famous in name, but ought to be.
Yeah.
These guys are slamming. And keep me on my toes. So I'm really into playing with these guys. It might be my best band. What else? So and a duet record I'm doing with an Argentinian pianist named Mariano Agustoni. And the reason I want to play with him is when we met, we discovered that we could create music without saying a word. That we would start to play and things would occur and resolutions occurred at the same time. We'd suddenly end up in a different key and do things. And we were quite impressed with that weird symmetry and vision. So I actually have a plan to do a record and already have one tune done in a style that I don't think has ever been done. So once the record is finished, I like new, I like original, I like and this is a piano duet, piano bass. And I don't think anybody will have ever heard anything like this record before because of the concept that I came up with.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And then that'll sometime in the next, after the Jack Bruce stuff, and like sometime after that, you'll hopefully have that out. Okay.
And the 12 guys that buy it will love it.
Oh, wow. There'll be a lot more than that, I'm sure. Yeah.
Guys, it's challenging music, but I like challenging. Challenging doesn't mean fast. It means challenging.
Sure.
If I'm challenged, I'm rising up in certain cases.
Yeah.
You know, as a sideman, I like not having to run the show. But as a leader, I like to find things that stimulate and challenge me. I love it. Makes me happy.
That's incredible. Wow. Well, it sounds like, I mean, you've got your next 3, 4, 5 years planned out pretty great, and some of the most amazing stuff going to be coming. I can't wait for the Jack Bruce thing. I'm so glad to hear that you're actually going to be doing some touring with it too. That sounds just really amazing. And that will be in the States and across, for people that are walking across seas too as well. Yes. Awesome.
States, Europe, Asia, South America. I'd like to go to Australia. They'll have me, New Zealand. You know, I want to do this and show people another facet of live music. So I'm very excited about it. I really am.
Wow.
Like a kid. I'm 68 years old. I feel like I'm 67. It's unreal.
Right. That's incredible. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for spending some of your time with us this evening. And
thanks,
man, I'm just so excited to hear everything you're doing. It's such an honor and privilege to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. I feel the same.
Oh, right on. Well, all right. Well, cool.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, great. We'll all be watching for you. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.